States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence. Please be seated.
Just a reminder to turn your microphones on, please.
Yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda, citizen concerns. Anyone to speak to any topics? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda for today. Need a motion?
I would move approval of the agenda dated March 24th, 2015.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same nay. Approval of the minutes of March 17th. Need a motion?
I would move approval of the minutes dated March 17th, 2015, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Discussion and approval of the claims.
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Human Resources, Ed Gilliland. Approval of the memorandum of personnel transactions. Karen, do you have one?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Secondary roads. Mr. Kusler.
Ben Kuzler, I'm the assistant to the county engineer. Mark asked me to represent this item today. We're recommending that you award the contract to Contact of Ankeny for our maintenance corrugated pipe contract for 2015.
Need a motion. I'd move it. Need a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Now, we've had a request,
Okay?
and I have to find it. You got more?
No, that's it.
All right, you're done. I've got to find Mr. Lutz on here. Here it is, number 11. Mr. Lutz thinks he needs to get on the road.
You've got a set time there.
Do I, on that one?
No, on 8.
4:40, it is 4:33. Can we do it in 7 minutes? Let's give it a shot.
Okay.
Yep.
Appreciate that. And yeah, we wanted to come back and again, we mailed copies of the Master Plan and Vision 2050. And when we presented it back in November or December, we really haven't changed much. We didn't receive any significant comments from anybody from when we left the report, the draft report here several months ago. So we had it printed, hard copied, and it's here for your review and acceptance. Our recommendation would be if you agree with it, you would accept the report. Really binds the county to nothing. It just says that we've prepared the report. It would pretty much bring our contract to an end, and you could accept it, put it on file, and then move forward as you wish. When we were here back in November or December, we suggested that when we get to the point where you do accept it, we would be happy to work with the county any way you see fit in helping you roll it out to the cities and or private sector in the county so that people have a good understanding of what it says, the opportunities that it creates, and can then talk about how you want to move forward in actually implementing it. So we're here for any questions or comments you have with regards to that, and we're here to
Well, first of all, I move we receive the report.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay.
Are we going to have a session with the board?
We'd be, as we've said all along, we'd be more than happy to facilitate any kind of a work session, planning session, whatever you want to do to build on what we did back in November when we kind of outlined what the report said. We went through, if you recall, the executive summary, the 10 projects, and so forth. We'd be happy to have another work session or whatever it is the board desires.
I think we can make that happen.
We'd love to do it. There's a lot of stuff in there. If you've had an opportunity to read it without falling asleep, more power to you. But there's a lot of information in there. And now that you're getting probably closer with a couple of projects and some things that are being talked about and actually implementing it, some of the concepts in there might actually start making more sense as you start to deal with them. And so if it's appropriate to have a work session, we'd love to do it.
Mr. Chairperson, I'd like to clarify with Mr. Clausen's question. Joshua, you're receiving this, you're accepting the report, and that's the end of the contract. Is that right, Joshua?
Previous contract.
Right, the contract to basically create this report. I believe we signed another contract in the last couple of weeks that's still in existence.
Right. There's a different contract out there, but on this one, this is fulfilling that requirement. So when you said receive, the motion was to, the question that he said was to accept. So I just want to clarify is that he's fulfilling his contract at this point.
Yes.
Do we still have money in that contract for
Yes, that question.
consultation?
Yeah, that question came up last time. We had budgeted $7,500. We have incurred some of that cost, but we have not billed that yet. And I think we've incurred about $3,000 or $4,000 of additional meeting cost and expense that would still be within that contract. So if we were to have another work session, we could probably do it within that $7,500 that was in the original contract.
So is that
Question for him.
In terms of the work product that you retained us to do, that's, in our opinion, that's it. We've presented it, asked for your comments. We received very few. We went ahead and finished the report. There it is. So if we can have another work session, we'd be glad to do it, and could probably do it within the structure of that existing.
It's not a dynamic report. It's not. You're not going to continue to work on it. That's his finished product. That's your acceptance.
right?
However, we do anticipate, if we continue to go forward, there's things in there that are already changing, and we would anticipate that.
Yeah, there's quite a bit in there that's changed already.
That's going to continue to move forward. But we need to bring that piece to an end to say, okay, this is kind of it. Now let's move forward and go from there. So
Was this morning's meeting part of this contract or the new contract? When you met with a couple supervisors?
this morning we
Department head.
discussed a couple of things. We discussed if this report gets accepted, how would we move forward in helping you roll that out? We really didn't come to any conclusion other than looking for direction. We would be happy to work with staff or whoever to set the meetings up. If you want us to do that, we could formulate that with staff. So we really didn't talk through that in too much detail.
The rural meetings.
Pardon me?
The
The
yeah.
rural meetings with the cities and so forth.
I just didn't know if this morning's meeting, what you felt was part of this contract, or is that part of a new project? Do you know? Can you say?
We did some things this morning that I think would be on the on-call piece of the contract. Yes. Today's meeting here, this time would be in fulfillment of that contract. Because we're presenting the final draft for your acceptance as part of that contract.
So will be filled in at some point in time on the on-call goings-on, I guess?
Yeah, we are tracking time to the on-call contract as we speak. I don't think we've billed anything for it because it's just been a week or two, but
Okay, at
Yeah.
some point in time, we'll have an update
yes.
on that meeting, okay?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Something that did come out of this morning's meeting, we have a very ambitious town south of us. Sergeant Bluff is progressing rapidly with their project. It would be I think somebody called it the poster child for a TIF project. So next week I will put on the agenda a resolution only, to support Sergeant Bluff and their project with TIF dollars. Also, a resolution to direct Dennis and David to proceed with developing the TIF district to include the Sergeant Bluff area, expanding the current one we have, as well as a resolution approving Dennis and David working with Bob Jostin to get all that done. Sergeant Bluff is really on a fast track.
I might recommend, Mark, before you bring a resolution to the board, have Bob Jostin review that resolution.
Okay.
Just because of the issues that are floating out with regards to. I would just suggest that you have that reviewed
Yes.
before a resolution is formally brought to the board.
Well, this would, I would think would come up when we have a meeting, the full board and yourself.
Yeah, you need a resolution in front of the full board next week to move forward with what
With
the next
Sergeant
steps are.
Bluff.
Yeah.
They are talking about opening bids in April 9th.
Well, we haven't even approved an amount yet.
Well, we approved 500,000 last year.
We discussed 400,000 that I remember.
I remember 500. It makes no difference. They're asking for more.
And Larry, this would actually start the formal process to bring those discussions to the board in terms of what is their formal request, how much, what's the board's position, and so forth.
And I think they need a resolution from us to support their financing. We're not saying we're going to all of a sudden write them a check, but we do support what they're doing, and that's what they need to keep moving forward.
Well, verbal support is a lot different than monetary, so.
Well, a resolution is certainly not monetary. Okay.
Yeah, what we envision, and this is coming from Bob Jostin, your bonding attorney, what we envision that resolution doing is really starting the process to move forward. There are several legal proceedings that are non-engineering proceedings. There are formal legal proceedings that are required for you to move forward, commitments that you will make if you decide to move forward. So,
Very good.
Are there any changes to mention from the draft version?
hey, did we bring the other modifications of the TIF? Do you have copies for
Is that yours?
Yes.
I just want to know what the document is supposed to be.
Yeah, the report itself, in the bound document of the report, there's really nothing too materially that has changed in there, other than we filled in a few blanks that weren't quite ready the last time. Since that time, we were asked to modify the financial model in there that shows having half of the TIF proceeds going to property tax relief day one. And so we've brought copies of this. Okay, we'll leave one copy here. These really haven't been presented to anybody yet. They're there, and frankly, that's the kind of thing that is good about this report. Any assumptions or revisions you want to make, we can quickly make those as you go forward. That's the dynamic piece of the planning document.
Can I just reiterate one thing, and then you correct me if I'm wrong for the
Okay.
public record?
Okay.
So what we're receiving today isn't the adoption of any such plan. We're not adopting anything. We're simply receiving the report, which can act as a guide in future decisions that this board makes. Nothing in here is an obligation of any funding. Is that correct?
Correct. That's
And it's the county's hope that we provide through CF Industries revenue, which would be maybe $131 million, 50% in property tax relief, and then ask communities to have, for lack of a better term, some skin in the game as far as leveraging other tax increment financing. Is that a generalized statement that's true?
Yep, that's essentially what the report is saying.
Okay, I just wanted
Strictly a
to,
guide, you're obligated to do nothing. You could throw the whole thing in the wastebasket the minute we leave if you'd like. But it does provide a guideline for the county in some of your decision making. Yep.
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Have a safe trip back.
Appreciate you getting us on early so we can get started. Thank you.
All right, we have a set time. Board Administration, Public Bidder, Karen James, Heather. Public hearing and sale of property parcel 026565, also known as 1117 Douglas Street. Need a motion?
Move the hearing be closed.
Well, no, this is to set the date for the hearing.
This isn't.
This is the public hearing? Oh, my goodness, all right. Got a motion to close. Need a second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Anyone like to bid on this property? Yes, sir. Yes, I would. Name, please.
Robert Corey,
Address?
1115 Douglas.
Oh, that sounds close.
It's close.
And your bid would be?
Well, I understand the minimum bid is $406, so we'll start there.
Plus $106 cost of services, right?
No, that's
That's included?
Included.
Okay, oh, I see. Anyone else wish to bid? Uh-oh. We have an auction. Good. Name, please, address?
Royce Randiger, and I'm representing Midtown Holdings. We actually are a member of Diocese of Sioux City, so we own the property right to the west as well. I have Jim Deshawn from Bishop Heelan, but actually Midtown Holdings would be the bidder in this case.
Okay, your bid is?
$500.
Would you like another bid?
Oh, we'll do 600 then.
Okay.
Make it quick, $650.
$650. Okay,
700.
all right. You might as well stay.
We'll stay here, huh? $750.
Okay,
Well, let's take it up to 1,000 and see where it goes.
all right.
$1,100.
1,250.
$1,300.
We can lower taxes at this rate.
1,400.
$1,500.
16.
$1,650.
17.
18.
19.
2,000.
We'll go 2,000. We'll go 2,001.
2,050.
Wait a minute, he said 2,100.
Going the wrong way.
2,150.
2,200.
2,250.
2,300.
2,350.
2,400.
2,450.
2,500.
2,600.
2,700.
2,800.
2,900.
3,000.
3,100. There is an assessment against the property too, by the way.
There is. Yes, there is. 3,150.
3,200.
3,250.
3,500.
Okay. Going once? Anyone else? Going twice?
Mr. Chairman, I move the bid of Robert Corey be accepted.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Karen, he needs to go up to the board office? If you'll go upstairs to the board office, there's a person up there that will take care of that. Okay, approval of resolution of notice of property sale 007080.
Move the hearing be set for the 7th day of April at 4:40.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. All right. Approval of resolution for notice of property sale for parcel 524265. Need a motion?
Move the hearing be set for the 7th day of April at 4:42.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right. Planning and zoning, Mr. Palello.
Director of Planning and Zoning. Today I request you hold a public hearing for the second reading of a rezoning petition for James L. and Monica M. Young. If you remember, this is a 7.5 acre parcel which is being sold to Eric Henning of College Products for the expansion of his business currently located at the intersection of Eastland Avenue and 210th Street. Both the Zoning Commission and staff recommendation is that the ordinance change from a ag preservation zoning district designation to a general commercial zoning district designation be approved. Be happy to answer any questions.
Can we do the second and third reading today?
We'll do just a second today, third next week, and at the same time you do the third, you'll formally adopt the ordinance change. But we need to close the public hearing first.
Need a motion to close the hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, now.
And then vote on the second reading. The sample ordinance is in your packets.
Move the second reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Next item, number 10. If you watched the paper yesterday and today, Bob Moritz, who was a longtime participant in the Los Hills Alliance, passed away at the age of 90. And in your packet, I believe you have a letter from Kathy Kostovich, resigning from the Los Hills Alliance. Don Snyder has agreed to serve on the Los Hills Alliance, as well as Richard Pope, who is a retired longtime extension person. I would move for approval for the three folks to be delegates to the Los Hills Alliance Board.
Second.
Do we have a first?
Thought you moved it.
Oh, I moved it, okay. Discussion.
Unless you're on there and you don't want to move it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, item number 12. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is just a clarification of a committee assignment that I apparently accidentally attended. I was on the Human Resources distribution list for the Health and Wellness Committee meeting, and I attended and I enjoyed it, and it'll be my last meeting because it's not my committee assignment. So I apologize to Supervisor Smith, who will probably do a better job than I will, and we'll look forward to subsequent reports. So
you're welcome to attend any of them. Just because it's my assignment doesn't mean you as a supervisor, Jeremy, can't attend that. You can attend any meeting you want to, really. So
well, I
if you
appreciate
enjoyed it. It doesn't have to be your last one.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So
Would Supervisor Smith like to move to accept the apology?
I wasn't really apologizing, but thank you, Supervisor.
Get down on your knees, I'll think about it. Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, approval of to poll Woodbury County employees and spouses concerning scams.
Oh, Mr. Chair, this actually came from attending that same committee meeting. Human Resources Department and the budget analyst presented some information where all county employees can receive, by way of Mercy Medical, a scan that's normally, 3 scans normally worth $99 at a rate of $50. And what I would like to see is if the county or the pleasure of the board would be interested in reducing that rate even further from $50 down to $25 for those that are at a high-risk group. That would be over the age of 40. And claims are at approximately 4.5.
I beg your pardon.
Well, a higher risk group than those who are under 40. So my apologies to any offended parties. But this would help to mitigate insurance claims, even if one scan resulted in identifying something that would otherwise be catastrophic. There is a financial impact. I've included that in the agenda materials. But it'd be predicated upon the number of employees taking advantage of this non-invasive and painless test. It's a stroke and artery screening an abdominal aortic aneurysm screening, and a peripheral arterial disease screening. And so given the preventative nature of that, I think it makes some fiscal sense. But at this time, what I am asking for action on is simply to discern the cost. And so I would make a motion to poll employees to see the number of individuals who would be taking advantage. This would incur no fiscal impact to the county at this point, but simply be a way of further information gathering.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion. If we did get into financial, could come out of the wellness money?
Yes, it could come out of the wellness program, could come out of the health budget.
Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The housing of contracts related to Woodbury County.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a way of discerning. I had been looking for a particular contract in question, and my executive summary is that all contracts that are signed by Woodbury County, this public body, should be clearly accessible, readily available to not only supervisors but also the public, and this would be a way of increasing accessibility, I'll call it. And so my hope is that all contracts be physically housed, filed, and available within the auditor's office, as well as placed on the county website. This would be a way that any member of the public could go on to our website and access basically any contract that is made between Woodbury County and any other entity and be housed online. Today, this is only an informational item, and so I would be requiring action of a motion in a subsequent meeting regarding the above recommendation, and I'd open the floor to any discussion.
They are already in the auditor's office, aren't they? Where are they scattered all over? Where are they now?
They're all over. Most of them, I think, are, but over the years, when people have come to the auditor's office looking for them, some of them are not there, including this one, I think.
Could you...
Will you keep all elected officials' contracts too, or just the ones under the Board of Supervisors? For instance, if the sheriff has contracts out, will those be housed in the auditor's office as well? Is that what you're referring to?
This is, if you're asking me, this is a policy that the board is passing, is they're directing all the contracts to be housed in the auditor's office. And again, it's up to elected officials when it comes to those policies. Most of us always comply with that. But I think beyond that, there's a discussion of whether who has the ability to sign contracts. And that, my understanding is that those are all supposed to come before the board. Is that correct, Joshua?
Generally speaking, yes. I mean, no department head could bind the county by signing a contract with only their signature. It would have to be approved by the board at a meeting and signed by the board chair.
What about the other elected officials? Now, you said department heads, that's the board, but you've got...
For the most part, they should come before the board as well, although there's certain instances where elected officials are statutorily authorized to do certain things, and if it's something that's a statutory duty of that elected official, then it wouldn't necessarily need to come before the board if there's not any discretion on the board's part as to whether the elected official does that particular duty.
Well, we've had this discussion before, and I see Dave's coming up to...
May I?
Yeah, just let me finish this thought. Titles is the one that comes to mind. Do you hold the titles now, Pat?
I believe we do.
For everybody? Okay.
I have no issues. I think the auditor, from what I understand when I went to sheriff's school, is you are the ones who enter into the contracts. I bring them to you
Is that the way you understand, Josh? The board enters with the contracts. I bring that to them. As sheriff, I'm not into I may sign off, but the board chairman and the board approves it, and it should go to Pat's
Right.
office.
The majority of the contracts would be that way.
So that's just my 2 cents.
So it would be all contracts.
And then Auditor Gill, would you be able to speak to what the process would be? Because I have no idea, but as far as putting these online, what would be a reasonable timeline on something like that? What would be the mechanics of making sure that they're...
If this passes, what we intend to do is send out an email to all the county departments, asking them if they have any contracts in their possession to take them to this. But our intent is to work with the board offices to put them all on the website so that anybody can go there. The other thing that we're talking about is meeting with as far as the minutes, is that whenever it says copy filed or some contract is referenced in the minutes, is that there will be a link that you can click on to pull up a copy of whatever was considered at that point. It currently isn't that way, but we would like to see, in conversations with the Human Resources Department, we talked about policies and ordinances too should all be on that website so that anybody can get to, anybody wants to see them should be able to get to them.
So we need to get that back on.
Right. I would just request that this be included on next week's agenda. It's clearly marked just as informational, and I know that this may be slightly out of order, but if there's a couple of things on the website I think we can also update. I think the liaison assignments could use some updating, so I apologize for speaking out of order, but just thought of that as well.
Okay, item number D.
I do have one more thing on that. In regards to the contracts, are we talking about housing the original document with the signatures with the auditor's office, or is it going to be a copy that the auditor is keeping?
It should be the original is what I'm thinking.
Okay. When we craft the policy, there should be something in there as far as retention, just so that we deal with that issue. And even if the contract has expired, there may be a reason that we would need to keep a contract for a period of time. So we certainly should deal with that in the policy.
We just reviewed the retention document that the Auditors Association put out, and they recommend that you hold contracts, the originals, for 10 years after the contract is fulfilled. Yes.
I was going to say, how do we know when they expire, but I guess they don't.
Well,
it depends on how the contract is
written. A lot of times the statute of limitations for a written contract can be 10 years. And that would be perhaps even after the contract itself has been completed or expired, but you'd still need it for that period of time.
So just for the public's information, if I was Joe Q. Public out there and I wanted to come into the auditor's office, I could get a copy of the original contract, maybe for the cost of copying it or something like that. Otherwise, I could be redirected to a website and then look and find, just in the spirit of accessibility.
Right.
Okay. I think that'd be good.
Okay. Item D.
Item D, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is inclusion of Rule 10 language. This is from the Iowa House. Auditor Gill, I have tried to kind of take the pulse of to see how he's coming along with bylaws and rules, and is crafting those as we motion for him to do. And this is just an item that would be, and I'll simply read it. A supervisor or other elected official addressing one another shall confine all remarks to the question under debate, shall be respectful of other members, and shall avoid referencing or questioning the motives of another member. I think this is a good thing, just to keep everything above board and to be directly related to the matter at hand. So it's informational. It's a give direction, which is a little bit of a different action required. So there's no binding motion that I'm making otherwise than to include that language.
Okay.
You didn't include a copy of Rule 10.
Rule 10 simply says a member of the House addressing one another shall confine all remarks to the question under debate, shall be respectful of other members, and shall avoid referencing or questioning the motives of another member. So I apologize for that. I just simply inserted a supervisor or other elected official in place of the term representative or member of the body.
I'm not against this unless it stifles debate.
And that would not be my...
You know, from the legislature, I'd rather see all new language saying exactly, you know, what you want to say instead of taking something from the state legislature.
The reason that I took from the state legislature is that it did say exactly what I wanted to say, and that was simply that all remarks would remain to the question under debate, shall be respectful of another member, and shall avoid referencing the questions or questioning the motive of another member. So that's why I borrowed that language, maybe because of my lack of creativity or the fact that it basically said what I wanted to say, and I think should be adopted by this body.
Well, if you get, I'm not opposed to this, but there's no monitoring, there's no penalty, there's nothing. So we're just adding another item.
Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, does allow for discipline under the direction of the chair and at the majority of the quorum. I didn't want to add in penalties or discipline or timeouts or anything of that nature, other than to have a reference to, you know, the fact that we as a body will avoid referencing or questioning the motives, even if it's in jest. So
I'm glad you're not suggesting discipline.
That
makes me feel a whole lot better.
Well, and only because it was asked.
I'm right next to you, so
okay.
I don't know what
Well,
might happen.
Well,
It could be for corporal punishment. I don't know.
yeah, seeing as you take my name in vain on this, a comment that I made to Mr. Ung,
right, and I didn't.
All of a sudden is
Well, and
somebody's disrespectful.
Well, and Mr. Clausen, I didn't necessarily want to bring it up, but I did think that wondering if someone was on someone else's payroll, even if it was in jest, I take you at your word, and so I appreciate that. But I want to just make sure that in the course of our debates, I'm sure we'll disagree, believe it or not, tonight publicly on some things, but we'll confine our remarks to the question at hand.
So you're going to work with Pat on this?
Right.
Okay, item number 13. Mr. Ung.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am sitting in front of the TV, so I think I'll stand. Well, to quote Mark Munson, here we go. This is a response to last week and the proposal for a county administrator or a county manager, however you would like to frame it. It's a case study of Scott County in particular, and it holds my conclusions. And last week I was hesitant to comment to the board because I had just gotten back from ISAC and was in the process of doing this research. So I want to be clear that my opinions on this issue are framed by the research. A county manager is a big step, or a county administrator. We have very few cases in Iowa to turn to when we want to see the advantages and disadvantages and recommendations they might have for us. Polk County and Scott County. Polk County is an outlier in all ways because of their population and their budget. Their board is full-time. They meet 3 times a week as a full board, and they have an administrator. You can see here the population breakdowns, the budget breakdowns, and the employee breakdowns. So it's important to mention that Woodbury County isn't playing catch up here. We're not necessarily behind the curve. There's no urgency to hire this position, in my opinion, because we're at 103,000. The next county has 170. The next county has 452. We're anywhere between 80 and 350% larger than us have chosen to take this step. The true average for a county administrator in Iowa exceeds that of a U.S. Senator, over $185,000. The information from last week was not incorrect, but it was based on the International City County Manager Association median, which was $117,000 in 2011. That was reported in the media, but the current number in 2014 is actually 135,000. And that's worth mentioning because in my background study, I wanted to bring something original to the board. I didn't want to rehash what we've already been talking about, so I wanted to get firsthand information from supervisors in these counties, what they've done and what they would advise us to do. The consensus of Scott County supervisors is that the proposed $98,000 would not be in line with a county administrator's salary, as it would draw weak interest in a nationwide search, which is how this position is typically filled most fairly. This is not me advocating for a higher pay. This is just me pointing this out. And I also want to say that I realize this is not a problem now with the proposal that was floated before last week's meeting, but in my mind, it would become a problem in the future. And hiring a county administrator is always an investment with real cost, and you have to understand that going in. That was their feedback. There's some more feedback from the county supervisors in Scott County, which is our case study. The chairman and the vice chair, particularly all of them, were very gracious, invite us all out to their county to see how things work. Obviously, most of them are in favor of it or they wouldn't have it. The chairman says he couldn't encourage it enough, graciously welcomes any Woodbury County supervisor to visit. Some of the pros of this position, so that I'm fair in framing the issue. The feedback was that the administrator sets up the agenda for the board, briefs the board. In their case, actually, they do briefings in 2-2-1 meetings before every single board meeting. I think that's going a little too far, and I don't think that's what's being proposed, but this is what they listed as a pro. And they answer questions related to it. Supervisors' time was also freed up. They only need to hold biweekly meetings now. Larger counties need that full-time oversight. It makes it easier to plan for the long term with 2 to 3 year budgeting. Their administrator works very closely in that process. And, quote, it takes politics out of it. The administrator was compared to the CEO of a corporation. I'm sure you've all heard that comparison before. The cons mostly came from new supervisors on the board. It distances you from the people, and I don't think we'll ever go back. The Chamber of Commerce and other entities like it because they only have to talk to one person. Also, lobbyists or anyone, quote, selling an idea to the county only has to convince one person, not 3. One of them said we have 48 committees and supervisors only attend 1/4 of them because the administrator attends the rest. The next one is a big point I'll get into later, but experience with government administration in general becomes more important to this position than experience with your county. They advise that we're moving too fast with our April timeline, and the opposite feedback of this administrator being like the CEO was someone who said government is not a business. This system prioritizes efficiency over other values like customer service, which in elected office is important to elected officials. The particular question I asked them all, including the Scott County Administrator and Assistant Administrator, was what do you think about combining the County Administrator with the Human Resources Director, which is the proposal? The unanimous feedback was no. I think if we want to look at Scott County as the case study, we should at least take this into consideration. Their answer was no, empower the right department heads instead on specialized projects. And Also going forward, please keep in mind, this is my discussion and opinion on these offices. This has nothing to do with the people involved. I also would like to compliment Ed on his job so far. He's been cleaning up a lot of the past, and I think, Ed, you're really a model for other department heads. And I say that because I'm behind the curve. He's been complimented in the front page of the Journal and on KSCJ, and it's my turn, so thank you. My concern is in this position being overloaded. Some of the comments back from the supervisors were this position may do both jobs, and I made it clear that I was not decided, because at the beginning of this project I was not decided, and I've reached a decision based on this research. The feedback was they won't do a very good job, but they'll do both jobs. You're setting yourself up for failure by not separating departments. Human resources is a critical full-time job, especially during union negotiations. It would intimidate employees from approaching human resources, and oh no, you don't ever want the administrator involved in personnel issues. The administrator herself said that we should also keep them separate, that it's a full-time job, but also offered that in lieu of a manager, that it's most important for the board to have 3 experienced representatives in areas of legal, like Josh Widman, budget, like Dennis Butler, and human resources, like Ed Gilliland. We need some context on the Scott County administration. The background of Scott County, this setup has been in place for 36 years, with Scott County itself being the 3rd oldest county in Iowa. Their county has a very strong policy handbook, but also a very strong administration handbook. So they keep very up to date, and they're very current on this. Experience: the Scott County administrator has 36 years experience in 3 local governments. Their assistant county administrator has 28 years experience in local governments. And also the permanence of the Scott County administration. Future county administrators are groomed by the current one and the International City County Management Association Liaison Program. This is typical practice. Also typical practice is to have an employment agreement, like 89% of county administrators. I mention this because it's often said, you get a county manager, you just have to snap your fingers and they're gone if you don't like anything they do. That's not the typical practice, and that should be mentioned. Going forward, I don't want to frustrate any fellow supervisors by focusing on something they don't think is worthy to be focused on, so I want to ask them to keep in mind that if we model our position after the assistant administrator, which is what we are doing, of Scott County, we must first acknowledge that the roles and philosophy of the administrator are duplicated in the assistant. The assistant administrator fills in for the administrator. You can't have one without the other in Scott County. The roles of the administrator: leadership typically comes from the administrator. Quote, I push the board to make decisions. And again, there is the agenda review before each biweekly meeting. Planning and operations: there is a 3-year budget planned by the administrator, which works out well for them. They use the budget director as more of a sounding board, plays less of a role than that position would in the future, and represents the board to other governments. Another caveat: I understand this is not being floated in the current proposal, but this is the track that this position tends towards. A liaison to cities and department heads: they also are so developed in their administration that they send a lobbyist to the state legislature. And these are roles that the assistant administrator is ready to fill in, and the position that we're modeling this after. Philosophy of the Scott County administrator: she described to me the differences with supervisors. I asked, were there contentious differences? No, but she said they are philosophical. After 27 years as a city manager to Davenport, the greatest frustration, I asked her what the greatest obstacle was. As county administrator for 9 years is dealing with elected department heads. It's, quote, hard to get them in the boat. Believes. The next one also applies to you, Mr. Clayton. Treasurers should be combined with auditors and recorders. there's a clear advocacy for a single tax levy and merging budgets with the city. Sometimes I think that constituents get so confused about city and county that might be a good idea. We don't control red light cameras, but that is a paradigm shift. And as former president of the Iowa County Managers Association, she advises Woodbury County to conduct a nationwide search through ICMA. And I want to give kind of a case study within a case study of the typical track of a county administrator. And again, this is not about the current proposal, but who would fill this position in the future? How would this impact Woodbury County, and how do we go about hiring it? There's a fellow named Ron Olson who is a city/county manager. It's very hard to find a dedicated county manager because most cities tend to use city managers. Most counties do not. So typically when you get a county manager, they come from a city background. They come from that area where they have jurisdiction over all department heads and they don't see a difference with elected officials. This person began as a deputy city manager of Arlington, about $150,000 pay, progressed on to city manager in the states of Ohio, Michigan, and Utah. Eventually went to Polk County, Iowa, drew down $166,000. He was replacing the former Polk County manager who went to Osceola County, Florida. So that's why I say the nationwide emphasis is more important in this position than having local experience in the county. Recently went to Corpus Christi, Texas for $198,000, got a raise to $207,000, went to $232,000. Typically what I've noticed is that when they reach a certain level, the county or the city can't increase them anymore. They have the knowledge base, they have the power, they say, I'm just going to go somewhere else. Then the board is in the position of attaining all that knowledge they had given to the administrator. A quote during the last raise from one of the council members was, "This is our way of saying we're happy to have you and we want you to stay here for a long time," said Councilman David Loeb, who made the motion for the salary increase. It's very important to retain these positions. The chairman said hopefully he doesn't go, but he's a pretty good guy while he was still in Polk County, and it's hard to keep the good ones a long time, Morrow said. Eventually this person could go on to San Antonio, where the pay is $355,000, all the way up to Santa Ana city manager, where they make over $500,000. This is just the natural progression of someone who is ambitious and in this position. People that do a good job are the ambitious ones. Now we get to the Scott County Assistant Administrator. This is the position that we are modeling the administrator for Woodbury County after. You'll recognize this chart from last week. We're not talking about this county administrator, we're talking about the assistant. In Scott County, that person is the Human Resources Director. I asked them, is this person always a Human Resources Director? And the answer was no. It's just the person who has the most experience. So it's not necessarily best practice, according to Scott County, to go to that particular position. They also have tapped or will tap the information technology head. That's not an option for us because we share that with the city. But sometimes they use the budget or finance director. The Scott County Assistant Administrator / Human Resources Director, what is the feedback from this person? The first-hand feedback from this position, which again we're modeling after, is that the Human Resources Director duties are primary. This person fills in for the administrator only 2 to 3 times a year. This is hardly representative of what we would be asking this position to do. The administrator's view is that the main reason for having this particular person is that they are excellent legal counsel to the board, as this person maintains a Juris Doctorate. And this person curiously made the remark that the budget finance director position is more suited to being assistant county administrator because of how often they deal with money issues. Now, what is what is the difference between a county manager and a county administrator? This is a question I've had for a long time. County supervisors couldn't tell me. County administrators answer to both. Only the Iowa Code knows. I won't read all this, but my intent in putting this up here is to show similarities and differences. On the left is the current draft job description for the Woodbury County Administrator / Human Resources Director. It says the administrator will do all these things. On the right is what Iowa Code defines as the board manager form of government. This is an alternative form of county government that 2 of the 99 counties use. It mentions the duties of the manager, which are all listed on the right, and says the manager shall. The differences between those 2 words are very similar and very different at the same time. Will just means that the board empowers them. Shall means the code empowers the manager, and they do all these tasks. My point in showing this is that these match up almost perfectly. We would be perfectly within our legal right to go this route on the left and adopt this sort of language, or language that mirrors the intent of Iowa Code for a manager. We can call it an administrator, slap that sticker on it, and then have 3 supervisors vote aye. But if you look at the right side of this, I got to thinking how similar they are and how different the process would be if we went through a change of government. Iowa Code would require eligible electors to petition to change the form of government. The board would establish an independent commission. In a year or so, the commission must recommend. The board then would then resolve by resolution a charter, and that would be adopted by majority vote at the next general election. This is a big step, in my opinion. Again, we would be perfectly within our rights to call this an administrator and to not give them and to not realize they have any statutory authority whatsoever. Their authority would come from the board, but this is very similar. The difference between will and shall and all this that you read here. What does Scott County's form of government represent? I did begin this journey, you could call it, with the same assumption last week that it is a hybrid balance, that it's a nice thing to emulate. However, Scott County is also an outlier in terms of administration staff and budget finance staff. They have 3 people in their administration department with an administrative assistant, and they not only have a budget director, they have a finance director or planner as well up in the department head level. So they have a lot more to work with. They're almost twice as big as us. I think it's unfair to make that a comparison. All proposed training goals that were mentioned, with the exception of budget, are already under the purview of the HR director. And speaking for myself, and I also would assume a board majority, this board will encourage, support, and enforce them all. I do not see any reason to block any of the progress that we've made so far as a board. In fact, the feedback I've been getting from the electorate is very good. I think this is the time to go forward with changes from the board and supply leadership from the Board of Supervisors. It was mentioned last week that I campaigned on this issue. That's false. I never did. I never said anything about it. And it was also mentioned that I campaigned on performance-based budgeting, which was true. I did campaign on that, and I was elected to do that. I think doing that with the advice of our team of advisors is preferable. And also, from a philosophical standpoint, the expertise for budget, finance, and personnel organization, HR, is split between 2 people in most counties, precisely because supervisors must balance them. One of the highest costs for a county is personnel. You want to make decisions where you have someone in the room that sees the personnel side and someone in the room that sees the money side. Those are 2 separate functions filled very capably by 2 separate department heads. So therefore, my current understanding of what Scott County's form of government represents is that we already have the true balanced hybrid system. It's the one 97 of 99 Iowa counties retain, the commissioner/supervisor system. The law's intent, and again, we could get around it and it would be fine, but the law's intent, and I support this intent, is for the electorate to petition for a change of government if they want to adopt either extreme, an elected executive on one hand, a strong mayor, or a board manager. The elected executive requires the same process. Essentially, it adds a, quote, county administrator position, but they're an executive of the board. They're elected at large. They preside over all the board meetings. They input into the discussion. They veto votes, but they cannot vote. The best comparison of this is a strong mayor form of government for a city. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the board manager form, which is known as more parliamentary. So going past Scott County, I decided that wasn't a fair comparison, and again, I also heard their feedback unanimously that based on their experience and based on what they've learned, we would be making a mistake to go down the road that we're going down. Johnson County has a population closer to ours, 140,000, we're about 103. It's been suggested that their executive assistant to the board may be another model to emulate as we seek a hybrid/weak county administrator because they make $93,000. That logically says they probably have more responsibilities. This also applies to Lynn County. They have the same setup, so they're clumped in with this as well. So I called the vice chair and some members of the board and their executive assistant. They revealed the following. Their executive assistant is often mistaken as a manager because of the salary, but they are not and do not oversee other departments. The position is paid extra to lobby state government and coordinate special projects not assigned to department heads, fleet management, centralized purchasing, etc. We have some special projects that have been in the media and have been carried out to conclusion very capably by certain department heads. And this is really what they've done, is put this into one person. We don't have to put it into one person. We could, but these are special one-time projects that the board gives direction and authority to this person, and they carry it out. There is no need to adjust the organizational chart of the county to impact posterity when you can, as a board, realize you have the majority already. The majority will is influenced through each and every department head on each and every project. The board's executive assistant and HR director are both very proactive in communication and shared tasks. One of them said, quote, "This relationship is critical for smooth management of government and implementation of the board's wishes," and I certainly agree. Incidentally, they do not have a county manager or administrator, but also advise against combining an administrator with any department head. So what did they do? Because Johnson County had this same discussion that we're having about a county administrator. They raised the fact that there's not someone there all the time. They raised the fact that we need competent day-to-day management. They began with our same main concern, and I want to quote Chairman Munson. He said, "We have 400 employees. Someone needs to be available all day, every day to address county business." And then quoting Vice Chairman Taylor, "The duties and will of the board can be carried out to a greater degree and with more efficiency and fidelity." This is where I started. This is where Johnson County started. This is where most counties start when they begin the discussion for a county administrator. Their solution is reflected in these points. They have 2 liaisons for not only every single department. We have liaisons for departments, but they also have them for every small city and school district. I think that's a great idea. I think Danbury should have 2 supervisors assigned to them that are more knowledgeable about Danbury than the rest of the board. Bring back information to the board. When they have 2 liaisons, the junior is paired up with the senior. Liaisons serve 2 years on the same committee. The junior becomes the senior. And then most importantly, the seniors are rotated out, no matter how much they like being a liaison. Frankly, this has been a stigmatized problem in our county, and I'm not blaming any particular past board, but the longstanding way of doing things, this county decided we're going to have liaisons become experts become seniors in 2 years, and then they're going to become a junior to another liaison assignment where another supervisor is the senior. Again, the will of the board majority is always reflected in these assignments. They can reassign them as they see fit, and they can assign as they see fit. But I think it works well for them. They have much more extended updates and discussion on committee report backs we have at the end of every meeting, but they make it more of a planning session. As we were talking about having Terry Lutz come in and brief the whole board, this is what they do. They bring back more information to the board. They make they turn everything together, and they come out with agenda topics for the next week, before or after the main agenda, as long as it's part of the public meeting, of course. After Johnson County public sentiment decided against the county administrator, the public reached consensus that supervisors would not remain part-time or go full-time, but commit to 3/4 time. There is constant criticism of county supervisors every election because they're just part-time, they're not full-time, they don't know what's going on, and there's no communication. Some counties decide we want to keep the will of the electorate reflected most faithfully in the elected officials having the hands-on and hands-off management tasks. And so we are going to assign ourselves more work. We're going to be here more often as a board. So in their case, at least one supervisor is in the courthouse every day. We don't have to emulate that, but it's a nice touch. When people come into the courthouse with questions, would you like to see a supervisor? The board acts as a referee when department heads disagree with the HR director or vice versa. Not singling out that position, but when there's personnel issues, there is a clash of some. It's a common problem where a department head may want to come directly to the board instead of working through the proper communication channels. But the thing to mention is that Johnson County had this problem more often before they implemented this solution. So the board acts as a referee when departments disagree, or vice versa, but this became much rarer with the above implementation. The board majority maintains the right to reassign liaisons. So I would recommend our board adopt a similar practice by the January 2016 organizational meeting. I think that would not only mend a few fences, but it would allow for a policy or a practice where we are sure that when a supervisor is assigned to a particular department, they don't become overly protective and see that as their silo. We need to get away from the silo mentality, and that's the only way that a board of 5 can function as one group. So I came to some conclusions and wanted to share them with you as transparently as I can. Cities tend to council-manager form of government because their emphasis on efficiency serves best a homogeneous population. Cities are urban, and it's a homogeneous population. Counties are different. Counties tend to commissioners form because their emphasis on responsiveness serves best the diverse population. As time-consuming as it can be for me to get a call from someone out in the county about a road, I like that part of the job. Woodbury's rural residents want board representation, not a county manager, and I've heard this firsthand. Not only in the campaign, but after, and while I've been in office. In fact, I called the editors of the Mobile Record and the Sergeant Bluff Advocate, and I said, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. You know the public pulse out in the county. You know what rural folks are talking about. Is there or has there been a recent clamor for a county administrator? Do they have an opinion? Do they want it? Has it been something that they've said the county board should do? Is it a source of frustration as they feel disconnected from the county courthouse being out in the corner of the county? And the answer was no, not at all. And that gave me pause because if I don't live out there, but but the editor of the Mobile Record has a lot of opinions circulating. A lot of opinions circulating, being printed through the paper, and I want to blend urban and rural interests here. And I think it's worth mentioning to my fellow supervisors, from what I know, there is no rural support for this idea. There is much more rural support for a supervisor to come from the rural area, and that can be remedied by people running, or it can be remedied by the districts. A lot of the districts are in Sioux City. I'm from Sioux City, and that's a stigma that this board has to overcome long term. Well, assume to take the politics out of it, the very idea of a county manager was a political one historically. Board of Supervisors typically more, when I go to an ISAC conference, most of them are in overalls. There's not much media at their meetings. In fact, when we were at, Supervisor Smith and I were at ISAC last, the president of ISAC said, you guys have probably all followed what's going on in Woodbury County. The Sioux City Journal does a great job keeping up with goings on in the county. We all had a laugh. Supervisor Smith said, don't believe everything you read. And
I had to say something.
Yep. and it was just, in Woodbury County, we're unique. We do have a very active press, and I'll get onto that. That's a good thing. But again, this idea is assumed to take politics out of it, just focus on the administration, the management, but the idea itself was a political one, aimed at mitigating corruption among elected officials. Media coverage and citizen involvement was and is the remedy, in my opinion. A good example, think about Woody Gottberg coming forward months ago with concerns about open meetings brought from what he's been hearing, the public pulse in the community. This keeps us accountable. This keeps us on our toes. These public meetings, I'm glad they're longer than they used to be. The media is the remedy for this problem. In the words of Polk County's application, their application for a county administrator, they say, the county administrator position receives its operational authority from the board, and the amount and extent of that authority has evolved and increased over the past 10 years. You don't really need to tell this to an applicant, but it's happened, so they let you know. Over the last 10 years, the extent of that authority has evolved and increased. I know that the Journal editorial board has pushed for a county manager for years, and I kept that in mind, but in reading their Sunday editorial, one of their quotes I wanted to point out was, in order to realize the full value of a county manager, the board should broaden and strengthen the role of manager over time, in our view. And this position would also, quote, be a good liaison between the board and other government and community entities. So the goal that was expressed last week is the local media, at least where we are in this county seat, would not stop there. The same thing that happened to Polk County, they started out like we're probably proposing to start out. Now they have a very strong county manager. The same thing is true of Scott County, and the same would be true of Woodbury County. And I've come to that conclusion just from listening and seeing how when they have supervisors that don't particularly enjoy that form of government, they don't go back. And if the administrator leaves because they found a stepping stone or because there was a disagreement, which is actually rare, the board is in a position that they have to reattain all that background knowledge of the different departments' inner workings because typically when you get an administrator, the idea is that the elected officials will take a step back. They'll have time to focus on higher issues, and necessarily they'll spend less time in the minutia. But in my opinion, a certain level of that is important, especially when you're dealing with a diverse population, and you want to be somewhat knowledgeable when you go to a department head instead of going to a department head and as a perpetually brand new supervisor and saying, how does this work? I don't understand this complaint I got. More conclusions. The county administrator comparison to a CEO in the private sector. This is just a common comparison. It's not necessarily from any particular person. Is invalid in my view. Because how many CEOs do you know that get involved in daily oversight of their corporation? They don't. So if we're talking about hiring a, quote, CEO to oversee the day-to-day operations, that doesn't make sense to me. The county administrator is not the CEO. The board of supervisors is the CEO. We have 5 CEOs in Woodbury County simply because one would be a king. The board manager form carries what if you just Google it, it carries this romantic notion that all power is concentrated in the elected whole, which deals with higher matters like policy, while the manager produces the end result under the constant oversight of the board, which can remove them at any time at the drop of a hat. So the board is way up here. They're allowed to focus on long-term goals, and they're freed up from the daily oversight. But I ask, whose constant oversight is really constant? If the board is freed up, they're not overseeing. That's the point. The manager, of course, is full-time. The board can become full-time, like Lynn County when we get huge, but county employees are full-time. Department heads are full-time. For this position, not for any person, not making any judgments, but for this position, think of this position and think of a board that is focused on other issues besides daily management, whose oversight leads to more institutionalized power in the long term. Which position, the board's position they put themselves in, or the manager's position that they are put into? It's not their fault, but they must have an answer for everything on the agenda. They must have a recommendation. Knowledge is power, is it not? A county manager is a popular campaign issue because it appears selfless and is itself a criticism of the incumbency. If you don't like how things are going, it's almost the 1-2 punch to a pitch. Say, put me on there, and then I'll get someone in there that's going to separate the politics from everything. That said, while in office, me personally, virtually no one has told me they hope it's the next thing we do. There's been a lot of support and a lot of disagreement on this board for the actions that we have taken over the last few months. But as for me, getting out there as much as I can, being on all these committees, I have not heard from anyone real support for this idea. Typically, you want to bring this up when the board is doing poorly, not when they're doing well. But that's also my opinion. So my final conclusion, and I realize this puts me in a unique position with the board. Again, my opinion is just framed by the research. As counties get bigger, the supervisors simply transition from part-time to full-time as warranted. In the 97 of 99 counties, that's what they do. The chairman's role also becomes extremely varied in scope, power, and practice. This has certainly been true in the past. On this board, the chairman is elected. The board elected them to be chair. The only other option, if you want a sort of executive, is to go through the change of government and elect an executive that separates the executive from the legislative powers of county government so that the elected executive would become sort of the president of the board. I believe representative government, think Congress and their approval ratings less than 10% for as long as I can remember, incurs its lowest approval ratings not because they exercise too much power, but because they abdicate too much, whether to other governments or to unelected bureaucrats, with or without the best intentions in the short term, giving the people the feeling they don't control their government. This is what I want to protect the citizens of Woodbury County from, not the short term, but the long term ramifications of this position. And it's worth noting that we would be the smallest county to even consider it. even if it is a quote hybrid. I cannot support a county administrator, not because of short-term concerns, but because of long-term repercussions to the influence of the voters and Woodbury County's own troubled history with administrators. That's all on the table right now, and I will take my seat. Thank you all for your time.
Discussion.
I would like to applaud.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Outstanding job. Now, you understand that if you would have hired a consultant to do that report, you would have paid him his salary for the year. You do understand that, I'm sure.
We're going to hire one to combine the auditor and the...
There you go. Do it. I'll be right there with you on that. So, I don't care whether you do a manager, administrator, or whatever you want to do. My problem with this is that for the time that I've been in the county, we have not had a good HR department. Finally, Ed comes along, and I actually see a glimmer of hope. And now you want to take Ed, a full-time HR manager, and now make him also a full-time city or county administrator and expect that he can do justice to both jobs? I don't think so. I really don't. You want to say, well, we're going to give up $5,000 of our pay to pay the difference between what he's making now and the extra money you want to give him. Woodbury County is the 6th largest county in the state of Iowa. You know as well as I do that your pay rank's about 25th. You're not overpaid compared to the rest of the counties in the state of Iowa. If you really want to do it, why don't you take the $98,000 you're going to pay this this county manager, split that up 5 ways, and work more hours? And you do the work that you're going to want this manager to do. That's just my opinion, you know. Matthew's absolutely dead on right with you're going to lose touch with the voters out there, and you're not going to have a good time with some of the elected officials probably either. So, my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Name and address, please.
Jeremy Oval, 3120 Transit Avenue. I'm just mainly concerned as well, like the last individual just stated, of the lack of oversight, the fact that you're going to not have a chance to have the first-hand contact with the voters themselves. You're going to have another level of bureaucracy, basically, and also money lost that you guys could be putting in your own pockets by just doing the work itself. So, in actuality, the position itself does sound like it'd be a good idea if we were a larger county. And like Matthew did with his research, it does show that, you know, we're not quite ready for that yet. If you guys wanted to go ahead and take on the extra work and find out it's maybe not able to be done, then you can at least prove that it was something that you guys tried. And then if it didn't work, you can go back to that option. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, I would respond, and one of the things, you know, in the course of the election, I didn't hear anyone say, I think supervisors are underpaid, you ought to make some more money, and once you get into out of campaign mode and get into office, make sure that you fulfill that campaign promise. I didn't hear that from anybody. But I'm a patient man. I wanted to float the idea because I recognized, you know, going into this, I thought, not being here, that we could possibly combine our county HR with the city's HR, and once in office, realize how many personnel issues we actually do have to work on. And I agree with Mike Clayton in the fact that I think our HR director is outstanding. In fact, we have tasked him now with courthouse security, and now we've tasked him with the possibility of a county administrator. So there must be something in Ed Gilliland that speaks well of you. So I echo what Matthew said. Usually when I'm talking to people, if they understand that this is budget neutral, that this wouldn't cost taxpayers any more dollars, then there's something to be said. And people understand, oftentimes, and you heard this throughout the presentation, Matthew, who did a wonderful job, I commend him for it, said things like, well, this is not in the current proposal, or this is what Scott County does, and I understand this is not what's being floated, or I understand that this is not a strong county manager, and that's exactly right. This individual would be tasked with providing the full-time daily oversight at the behest of the board. And once voters understand that that doesn't mitigate any of the responsibility, any of the being in touch with the voters, and doesn't put a wall of bureaucracy, but actually helps to hold to the fidelity of the policies that we help to implement, I think that there is more public support. It provides department heads with goals not in lieu of supervisors, but in partnership with. And I've seen that. In fact, I would argue that what our current HR director has been doing has been exactly that, at the behest of some of the supervisors, albeit without increased pay or without a title. In fact, he's been utilized in many ways, meeting with department heads, helping to set goals, in some instances coming up with action plans, and in my estimation, because we do have some challenges. We have challenges I brought forward with timeliness and just on what the data says on secondary employment. There is no good evaluation system, either for our department heads or our personnel at large. I think that could be a very valuable resource. Would that be in lieu of any of these elected supervisors? Absolutely not. That would be in partnership with. That would be working with our elected officials. And so I think that because of that, I see a great opportunity. I think a lot of what you heard was what Scott County does. And yes, there is a somewhat similarity between their assistant director. But I think that there's an opportunity where we are Woodbury County. We are unique. And so maybe this position is not replicated elsewhere. It's because we're our own county and we were elected to make those decisions. The other thing I would say is this. The advocacy, and I'm not implying that this is what Supervisor Ung is advocating, but the advocacy for simply more hours with more pay, and maybe we can split up an additional amount of money between all of us, and I do not think is the public at large's will. In fact, I would argue the opposite, that a lot of times the public becomes jaded because they feel like people become professional politicians. This becomes the full-time job. In fact, I would argue that our founding fathers, if I may, wanted elected officials who were farmers and teachers and who were tied to other professions so that they understood what it was to make a paycheck and to pay taxes upon it. So for those reasons, I do appreciate, I disagree with Supervisor Ung, but I appreciate all the work. I think Mike Clayton's absolutely right. This in itself is valuable. We will not pay you for all the work that you did, other than what you're already paid, but thank you for it. And I want to make one other point. If there was ever any assumption that everything is sort of packaged behind the scenes and things are ready to go on a 3-2 vote, this would show that that's not the case. Because we have a disagreement. I disagree with Supervisor Ung on this issue. I respect him. I believe that I'll make a motion here shortly to have a working committee, and I believe that it will not pass, and that's okay. He has all my respect in the world. I thought that this would be a good idea to establish more fidelity, because we just set a budget that's roughly, Dennis, you can correct me on the exact number, $51 million. And I want to make sure that once we've done everything we can to have the leanest, most effective budget, that we do well by Woodbury County's tax-paying families. And I think that full-time operational oversight, working in partnership with setting goals, making sure those budgets align with performance-based budgeting, I think we have the right individual to do that job in coordination and at the behest of the board. I think it's an opportunity, but I realize something else. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't get everything you want. Sometimes in government, you don't win the day, and that's okay. But there's a conversation I wanted to start, I wanted to have, and maybe next year, supervisors will have an opportunity. I think I missed my window, if I understand it correctly. Supervisors will have an opportunity to take a little less, but to do a little more, to work smarter in some ways. I think we have an example of that working with our budget analyst this past budgeting cycle on how we went about some things. But again, I appreciate everybody up here, and I'm not just saying that. I respect everybody up here. So there.
It's been a great exercise. I would like to jump to 15, and rather than continue this discussion, I would call for a motion to approve this with a second and a roll call vote.
I would move a working committee to craft a job description recommendation of an HR director / county administrator position, with the understanding that it may not pass, but there you go.
I'll second.
May I discuss?
Sure.
I would have urged my fellow members to withdraw this item, but that's not to be so. I don't really understand the need for a vote when it's already set, but I respect it. I would just jump back, and I would agree again that the HR director is doing a lot of these things that were proposed last week. I fully support it. Supervisor Taylor and I have been teammates on virtually every sort of initiative you can imagine that we've tasked the HR director with, and we both have the same goal, and he also has my utmost respect. I would also say the department head annual review does not exist, but if the board empowers a department head to do something, they can do it. Whether or not they're necessarily a step above on the organizational chart, they can do that. The reason I will vote no on a working committee is because the motion says it's a working committee for job description and recommendation of HR director / county administrator position. It's not that I'm not open to discussing revising positions, revising duties, or implementing effective or responsive county government. It's the fact that the motion in our agenda packet says that the people that attend these meetings should review Supervisor Taylor's PowerPoint from last week. All I would do is ask that they also review my PowerPoint from this week. I don't think we'd really get anywhere in those meetings. And so in the interest of time and respect to those people who I believe were prematurely invited into this discussion before there was a vote on this, I will vote no, but I am certainly willing to discuss the issue with anyone that wants to come to me without a preconceived notion of what this position would be.
I think we made a mistake very, very early on in using the word administrator or manager. That kind of drug it down. Anyone else? Mr. Gill.
Clausen.
No.
Smith.
Nay.
Taylor.
Aye.
Ung.
Nay.
Monson.
Nay. Okay, that kind of takes care of number 14 unless you want to
I withdraw number 14.
All right, next items. We have a letter in the packet from Munson and Butler. Would you like to review that, Mr. Butler?
Dennis Butler, Finance Operations Controller. Mark, the chair, and myself have been meeting with the city. Since the first year, we try to meet on a monthly basis. And when we do this, we're trying to find places where we can be more efficient and cost-saving by possibly joining services, bidding out items, things like this, where it'll be a benefit to the taxpayer. Yeah, we did discuss 7 different items, and Mark can jump in any time because we're both there. The first one on the list is the city's providing us a list of service agreements to review in hopes that some might meet the needs of the Woodbury County. The county attorney's office will review and make any recommendations on these service agreements, hopefully. Number 2, the county is in the process of gathering a list of garbage pickup sites during the month of April the city will bid out the contract that will include the city and county. Increase in volume could result in cost savings. Number 3, there was discussion regarding the purchase of copy paper. Each entity will check with their departments on amount and what type of paper is being used. There's some use big sizes, some use different quality of paper for copies on milers, regular copy paper, things like that. So the city, county and city would bid out the paper in May after we gather the information. Number 4, contracts for elevator maintenance was discussed and a possibility of a combined bidding process to achieve maximum savings. In this case, there's some do. Otis is doing some. Who's the other one, Mark? Schumacher.
Schumacher notice.
Yeah, and they have different types of elevators where sometimes these actual companies have to service their elevator. But in other cases, there may be places we can combine the bids with the city and possibly, again, based on volume, get a cheaper price for the maintenance contract. The county will be working with building service about our janitorial supplies, such as our volume. There's another possibility of joint purchasing with the city to buy in bulk and save money. In this case, we'd buy in bulk, but the actual product would be delivered directly to the department wherever they're located. They just pull it out of stock, they call, they pull out of stock, and then each individual department and division would be billed to their budget. It's just a matter of getting it in bulk and then getting it out to the people.
Now, the nice thing about those first 5 items is it doesn't change the way we do business. We would put out a quantity to, through an RFP process to the companies that would provide that service, and the low bidder, of course, would get it, but they would bill each entity just as we do now. So everybody would still work off of their budget line item as they are currently doing that, and it doesn't change anything. The paper situation, I think it's going to be scary when we find out how many reams of paper we purchase, but there are companies that will store it, and so if somebody wants 10 reams of paper, they call up the company, and the company brings, based on the RFP agreement, at the price that they agreed to. It's a win-win-win.
Yep. Item number 6, we have budgeted for Siouxland paramedics or an ambulance service in our next year's budget, the amount of $48,000 if there happens to be a subsidy we have to do. But the ambulance services are going to be bid out in the next couple of weeks. The scope will be set, whether it serves Sioux City only, Sioux City, maybe rural, Woodbury County. They do go on calls out in the rural. Also, they do go to Dakota County, they go to Union County. But this is a stepping stone where Sioux Falls has done this. They did get 3 separate bids. It did lower their price. So this is something the city's going through. I think we should partner up with them and see what the best service we can get, because it does affect our rural citizens somewhat. Also, may get on board Union County and Dakota County to help share in these costs. Nothing is free, and I'm sure they do pay some costs now. We're trying to get some equality, but the main thing is we bid it out and hopefully get a lower price. Yes?
Dennis, ironically, with the Journal's editorial, one of the things they talked about with the county manager, which I won't revisit again, but they talked about the city.
Oh, please do.
Stand down there, Supervisor. The city, the county, and the school district. Looking at cost sharing, anything that could be combined with schools here, is that not really?
We did mention that on a couple items. Potentially there is a possibility. We have not at this point talked with the school district. We just maintain focus with finance assistant city manager.
Okay.
But that is a possibility, yes.
Okay. Just
the last one we did talk about, which we didn't get very far on, but using a per diem reimbursement policy. In other words, so much per day. Say it's $30 a day. If you leave before 7 and you come back after 7 that day, or you stay overnight, you get so much a day. You don't have to track all the paperwork. You don't have to have all the receipts. They just claim per day what it is. Now, we haven't, I don't know how that fits. Haven't talked to Pat how that works, but
They did send a form over where you do make somewhat of a daily log of your meals and things, but they do get $30 a day. If you spend $25, you get $30 a day. If you spend $50 a day, you get paid $30 a day. But it does on their side
care
take
what
the
they
per-
eat.
No, correct. You may have water, and you may have a T-bone steak at night, but you're staying within your per diem.
There's probably pros and cons to.
Yes, there definitely is.
I'm sure.
If you go to Washington, D.C., $30 will buy you breakfast.
Go ahead.
They have levels. Minneapolis just moved into level 2. I think I heard that. But Des Moines is a level 1, and then there's a level 2 because you'll never get anywhere. $30 is breakfast in D.C.
Yes, it is.
That might be a level 5.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at now. We meet monthly, usually, I think it's first, second Wednesday.
When we get to the RFPs, we got to have Joshua look them over. They're going to have their people, and then we'll bring it back for the board to deal with it.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, there's a Les Hills bill in here for $2,000. That is in the budget. So all of that's there. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to mention very quickly, Planning and Zoning Commission, I attended last night, and if I'm wrong, Mr. Palello, as he insisted I call him, will make sure that I have these members. I wanted to recognize them. We have Christine Zelmerzand, Tom McBride, Bruce Garby, Barb Parker, and Dave McWilliams. Okay, and I just wanted to recognize those individuals without pay, take time out of their busy schedules, and we reviewed AGP's conditional use permit before making a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment last night. It's exciting stuff, but we're looking at, their being in harmony with general purpose and going through basically a list to make sure in the zoning requirements that it's compatible, that there's no sort of nuisances, and I'm learning as I'm going along. But this is an exciting time to be in Woodbury County. AGP is going to bring in approximately, I think it's 100 construction workers, about 19 permanent jobs, and a significant investment in our tax base, and planning and zoning is an integral part of that. So I just wanted to recognize the department head and his commission for all of their hard work and thank them for what may be a somewhat thankless task.
Anyone else?
Mark Munson and I earlier today attended in Lamar's the Sioux Rivers Regional Governance Board for Mental Health. We have a lot to learn about mental health and the consortiums that have been formed, and it's still a process. The next meeting is next month. An item that's been delayed for a couple months that the board should be aware of is a amendment to the 28E agreement, which has to pass through the governance board and then each of the 3 separate boards in Woodbury, Plymouth, and Sioux. We have some concerns about that, and so that was tabled and will be brought back to the board likely after the next governance board meeting at the end of April. But it's important that all the counties be unanimous in that because it's binding as far as tax levies and other issues.
Anyone else? Anyone in the audience? Need a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Let's go.
I want to congratulate you on an excellent presentation. Whether I agree with you or not, it was an excellent presentation.